Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Kris. I just saw this video pop up. It's 3 weeks ago from History March. You can see me click that thumbs up. You can do the same for me. That helps tremendously. And if you could also subscribe to the channel, that helps me out a lot as well. You don't have to. You can also donate to the channel through the thanks button. You can request a video. If you do, your name will be sponsoring that video when I react to it. You can still request videos. It just takes longer to get to, but I've lost all my my list. So it'll probably be shorter. You'll get a shout out in terms of, I'll say that the video was requested. I won't say your name or anything like that. You just an added benefit for anyone who cares. All right. This is the last stand of the 300. Battle of Thermopylae. 480 BC, the fight for Greece. This will be a two-parter. A two-patted, kid. Hey, kid, I'm going to break this down into two pats. I'll probably stop right here. First one will be 13 minutes, and the last one's going to cover all of that. I did kind of check ahead at the end, and it does go past the 25-minute mark, so that's why I'm breaking it down. Okay, let's get into the video right
by War Thunder.
now.
It's 480 BC, and in the midst of an invasion by the mighty Persian Empire, the famed 300 Spartans stand side by side with their allies. King Leonidas knows that the fight against Xerxes begins that day.
Just for unrelated, I have a redfoot, yellowfoot hybrid tortoise. Russian redfoot, yellowfoot hybrid tortoise. Her original name was King Leonidas. And then she laid eggs. So now she's queen. Not Leonidas or anything like that. She's just queen. If I find out what the, thinking now, if I find out what the queen's name is, I'll change her name to that. Anyways, back to the video.
But feels only a grim, if calm, impatience to check the arrogant hordes that would presume to conquer all. The great King Xerxes observes the stubborn several thousand Greeks arrayed for battle, perhaps confident his vast army will quickly sweep aside their pitiful defenses and send them scurrying back into the lands he would soon rule. Greek blood would redden the earth.
Sorry. I have to do something real fast. I apologize. Let me pause this. I just got something to take care of real fast. Okay, I apologize. I'm trying to, my old computer that I used for recording, let me go back. My old computer I used for recording, I'm kind of pulling off a bunch of stuff and just trying to dump things. And it's been going through this whole process, and it just popped up. And it's running smoothly right now, and if I let it kind of go into rest mode, then it's going to give me some issues, so I just had to take care of it real fast. Apologies, we went back 15 seconds.
Battle. Perhaps confident his vast army will quickly sweep aside their pitiful defenses and send them scurrying back into the lands he would soon rule. Greek blood would redden the earth. These insolent peoples would bend the knee, and his father's defeat at Marathon would be avenged. The ground shakes as the first wave of warriors approaches the allied phalanx. The war for Sparta and for all of free Greece was on. As with many great events of history, the events surrounding Leonidas, Xerxes, and their army's iconic struggle at Thermopylae can be directly traced to the earlier defeat of the first Persian invasion that commenced in 492 BC. During the reign of Xerxes' father Darius, the Persian Empire had launched a largely successful invasion in response to Greek interference in the Ionian Revolt, which saw Darius reconquer Thrace, subjugate Macedon to his will, and solidify Persian dominance over the Aegean Sea.
This Persian Empire is, not now, but that is later on the Ottoman Empire, correct? That's that area. Is what I'm meaning.
However, though largely successful in his objectives, the invasion failed to incorporate all of the Greek lands into the King of Kings' vast domain. Indeed, around a decade before Thermopylae at Marathon, the allied army of Athens and Plataea defeated the invaders and denied the Persians mainland Greece. Even so, the presence of Persianized Thrace and Macedon so close to their own homes could not have soothed concerns of those free cities that the King of Kings' designs were truly checked. The Persian or Achaemenid Empire was truly the superpower of the age, having its origins in the rise of Cyrus the Great. The domain of the Great Kings covered an area from Egypt to the Indus, from the Aral Sea to Macedon, on the very doorstep of the Greek states themselves. Darius's empire was vastly more powerful in resources and men, and the King of Kings now set to the task of organizing his overland campaign to finish the defiant Greek states once and for all. Alas, for Darius, this was not to be. Having passed away in 486, Xerxes assumed his father's place and inherited the ambition of subduing the Greeks. A revolt in Egypt in 486 delayed this, but by 481, Xerxes' own preparations were well underway. As well as the pontoon bridges and a canal, supply depots dotting the Thracian and Macedonian coastlines left the defiant Greeks in no doubt that the reckoning was fast approaching. So who was this new King of Kings bent on avenging his father? Xerxes was the first son born to Darius following his own rise to power. His own lineage was impressive, not only as the son of the reigning great king, but no less than a maternal grandson of Cyrus the Great himself, through his mother, Atossa. Darius obviously held high hopes for his tall and handsome younger son, as Xerxes was made heir apparent over his elder half-brother, Artabazanes. Undoubtedly noting that his predecessors had conquered before him to solidify their grip on the throne, for Xerxes then the pressure was doubly so, given his rise to the throne was through...
Sorry,
some younger son, as Xerxes was made heir apparent over his elder half-brother, Artabazanes. Undoubtedly noting that his predecessors had conquered before him to solidify their grip on the throne, for Xerxes then the pressure was doubly so, given his rise to the throne was through selection rather than strict primogeniture.
I wanted to read that.
Far from a coward or weakling as implied from a reading of Herodotus, as a King of Kings, Xerxes by definition was a warrior, endorsed by a warrior elite, the succession running from father to son. Having subdued the Egyptians and perhaps the Babylonians too in 485, Xerxes also campaigned in Africa and Asia. All this flies in the face of the cliché effeminate caricature of the Eastern despot. As for the other great figure of Thermopylae, King Leonidas couldn't have been more different. As the leading state and most powerful of the alliance, Sparta could thus arguably boast supreme status in the Greek world. At the time of Thermopylae, of course, King Leonidas ruled as the Aegeid monarch. Around the age of 60 at Thermopylae, Leonidas had not long reigned as king, only having assumed the title 9 years before. As the third of 4 sons born to Anaxandridas II, Leonidas likely never expected to become king, though, married to Gorgo, daughter of Cleomenes, he was well placed to do so after the dodgy demise of his elder half-brother. Prevented from mobilizing their full army due to the taboo of doing so during the yearly festival in Apollo's honor, this then was the king who led the famous 300 out of Sparta to jointly face the oncoming wrath of the Persians in 480. Given his age of around 60, it's quite likely Leonidas's military experience was grounded in the smaller conflicts that were typical of his time. While opposition to the Persians was focused on Sparta and her Peloponnesian allies, the joint victors of Marathon, Athens, obviously had a vested interest in resistance, given they were to be given particular attention by Xerxes, and so also joined this alliance to form the Hellenic League, which was further bolstered by various other cities and islands. Thessaly too had initially elected to fight, and in that spirit reinforced a hoplite force that would contest the Persians at the Vale of Tempe. However, upon learning the true extent of their foes' numbers, and realizing this position was untenable, had little choice but to yield to Xerxes. The remaining allies thus zeroed in on Thermopylae to make their stand, while at sea the Hellenic fleet would hold position to the east off the north of the island of Euboea to contest the Persians. The army that Xerxes had gathered at Sardis in the autumn of 481 was indeed massive by any estimation. To the Greeks, even the modern conservative estimates of 80,000 that made up the total number of the Persian army would have seemed gigantic. Though Herodotus's total strength of over 5 million is grossly overinflated, then a Persian force of upwards of the lower hundreds of thousands was more than enough to crush Greek resistance once and for all. With the onset of spring, Xerxes' colossal army lumbered west across the Hellespont and towards central Greece through the vassal countries of Thrace and Macedonia. At sea, the Greek fleet held its position about 40 miles east of the army, set to halt any Persian attempt to turn the land forces. It's likely too that the fleet here also sought to prevent a full Persian takeover of Euboea, from which there was a short jump across the narrow strait into Attica and Boeotia. Luckily for the Greek fleet, the superior Persian fleet was mauled by a storm en route to the area off the coast of Magnesia. Having spied their Greek foes from their temporary base of Agatai, the Persians decided to send a detachment to round Euboea and cut off the Artemisia fleet. This force of ships too, however, was caught in a storm off the eastern shores of the island, while the Greeks had sailed to engage the remaining Persians. Fighting a fierce days-long engagement with the reduced Persian fleet, the allies had taken significant losses, though the Persians too had suffered. However, unable to afford these losses, unlike the Persians, the Greek fleet withdrew to Salamis to await better circumstances to fight. Meanwhile on land, Leonidas was readying his men at Thermopylae. Though famously narrow in general, the level passage squashed between the mountains to the left and the sea to the right was particularly narrow at 3 points. The so-called east and west gates were particularly narrow, while the middle gate, though wider, had other advantages. This point in the pass formidably guarded the left flank of the holding force with a sizable sheer cliff, whereas the other gate's landward approaches were merely steep but not sheer. A further plus for Leonidas was the presence of the Phocian Wall. Though somewhat in disrepair, a wall had been constructed by the Phocians to help contest the invasions of their enemies, the Thessalians. The day before the commencement of battle, Leonidas set his men to repairing it as best they could, though only so much could be done about the major disadvantage of trying to check the Persians in this area. The Anapeia path did present a way around the Allied position. However, as with all invasions in a time where maps were rare if non-existent, such local knowledge was beyond the foreign force. To guard the path, the Spartan monarch dispatched about 1,000 Phocians. These local men certainly had the most to immediately lose, and in theory were likely to sell their lives dearly to any would-be aggressor. Being a history buff, nothing gets my blood boiling like an authentic and historically accurate game. With War Thunder, the sponsor of today's video. As for the enemy, Xerxes.
Well, they're about to get into the battle, so we are going to go ahead and cut this here. Part 1. I know what you're thinking. Oh, nothing really happened. Well, I didn't make the video, okay? I didn't make the fight or the video. Has anyone watching this video been to this site? Because I've heard it is hard to imagine now because it's not the same. I don't know. Anyways, we're going to end this here, but we will be back with part 2. And until then, hope you enjoyed the video. I understand. Till then, have a good day, have a good night.